If I had access to all the drink in the world, I would have stayed in that room until it was all gone, or until I was gone.
Before I was the life of the party, and then all of a sudden I started becoming the death of the party.
When I heard patient alcoholic and my name in the same sentence, I then knew I had to do something about it.
I used alcohol every day of my life over the next 6 years, to the point where I'm quite fortunate to be alive here today.
This week, we're going to focus on alcoholism, the largest single problem within the sphere of addiction. Statistics show that alcohol addiction and abuse is the single biggest contributor to society's misfortunes and damages. For young people, drinking alcohol is generally regarded as a normal activity, one of the rites of passage on the way to becoming an adult, a way to unwind and have fun. What begins as recreational drinking can have serious consequences once it becomes out of control.
My mom and my dad was separated when I was 3 years old. I also felt like at a very young age that I didn't belong, and I always struggled to fit in.
Moving countries the way that I did at such a young age and having to learn new languages and adapt to new cultures left me a bit on the outside. I felt out of place, the outcast.
I was born in District 6. One of the factors that led to my parents being divorced was definitely the move from where we had grown up. I always had a sense of maladjustment that I never fitted in.
So the more studies they do about the biological nature, the genetic nature of dependencies, the more they see how extremely important the social and the psychological part is. So the combination it's extremely important.
I'd like to think that there was something to complain about, but there wasn't. It was a nice upbringing, strict upbringing, but loving family, never went without anything. My dad used to let me sip his beers and his wine and from a young age, but at that age it didn't mean anything to me.
I started experimenting with alcohol when I was 12 years old. The first time that I had it, it done something for me, and I think I took to it like a duck to water. I didn't say like when I had my first drink at 13, whoa, I'm looking forward to becoming an alcoholic and a drug addict. That was not what I was looking forward to, but unfortunately that is what happened.
It's probably very difficult for many people to understand that at 13 and 14 I never had one drink. I passed out at the school braaivleis that we had, and looking back I can't remember if anybody drank as much as I drank. I thoroughly wanted that experience that I saw other people have when they drank. What I do know is that it was very, very, very powerful.
The brain chemistry that alcohol brings about in people is that of pleasure. And in some people, it brings about an inordinate level of euphoria and pleasure.
My first memory of alcohol was when I was 8. We were in Italy during a summer holiday. We were all sitting at the table, and the mother asks me if I drink wine. My immediate answer was, sure, all the time. So she served me a glass of wine, yeah, and as soon as she finished pouring it, the glass was in my hand and it was down my throat. There was nothing normal about an 8-year-old lying about his drinking habits and downing a full glass of wine in front of an audience.
I think we are seeing more or younger people in treatment over the last couple of years. And I don't know whether that is that younger people are asking for help sooner or whether there's just a bigger problem among the youth.
When I started to take alcohol, I had this newfound confidence. It was as if when I started drinking, there was this new person that stepped inside of me. It started at the bottom of my toes, and then it rose up slowly to the top of my head, and it was like I was Superman. And we first started to experiment, which was during the day we would bunk school, run away, and we would buy some cheap wine and beer. But then after that, we actually started then like on a Wednesday and then sometimes on a Friday to start drinking because we felt it was fun. A lot of people invited me to parties. No party was a party without Gideon. 5 years later, the progression now of my alcoholism. I also had a lot of blackouts where I would end up going to a party and I would remember the first 2 hours of it. I started drinking to fit in. And all of a sudden, my drinking was starting to cause me problems where I wasn't fitting in anymore. And around that time, I started feeling isolated, felt lonely, because people were pushing me away. And then I started drinking by myself. I knew that I had a problem. I just didn't know how to deal with it.
They drink more and more and more than what they previously needed. And they also find it difficult to stop. Often the person might not even drink socially anymore. They might drink in isolation.
I never hung out really with people who didn't drink. And within my own family, slowly but surely, I gravitated around those people who also took a drink. I progressed to needing a lot more to get to the state that I got when I passed out at 13. And I was dependent on alcohol to live, to get through my day. I had a couple of shots in the morning and it would get me through the teeth of the day. And then when that had worn off, my body was crying out for more. I knew that this was a problem. I could, however, not do anything about it.
If we look at what amount of alcohol drinkers in South Africa consume, we're looking at roughly 17 to 20 litres per drinker per year, and that's pure alcohol. That figure places us within the top 5 heaviest drinkers in the world.
I blacked out for the first time on alcohol at the age of 12. I wanted the recognition, I wanted the being looked up at from others according to what I was doing, and I believed that alcohol was that gateway to get that recognition.
Drink never really came into the picture for me until I was around 20. I mean, I remember not liking the taste. Even up to university, I thought, shit, I better start liking the taste. Everyone else seems to like it. But I couldn't even drink a pint. I was slaughtered after a pint. And then university ends, playtime's over, everyone gets on with their lives, start building lives and getting into relationships, having kids, and I was a complete mess. I completely lost the plot. I didn't know how to deal with it. My drinking escalated from then. It was very progressive. I remember going on binges and not being able to sleep and promising myself I would never do it again. And I'd wake up and I'd be like, right, this is it. This is where my life's gonna change. By 2 o'clock in the afternoon, bang, I was out again. It was only a short while before I started to steal from work, not turn up at work, on the rampage.
The situation was close to me hitting my rock bottom, to the point where I was admitted to a rehabilitation clinic. On leaving treatment, I kind of made it through the first 3 months. Somebody asked me whether I really couldn't have one drink. And this triggered off this addiction in me again. I had a drink one Sunday evening and it had absolutely no effect. And I then had another triple and another triple. And I went into the bathroom, I put my hands up into the air and I says, I can handle it. I then started drinking on a daily basis again. And this was probably one of the most painful experiences, because now I had a kind of a head full of information and education, and a soul and a heart that was telling me, you know the direction you've got to go into.
So I ended up in treatment and I managed to stay away from alcohol and drugs and mood and mind altering substances for a year after. And I knew then, when I relapsed, I was in big trouble, because everything I'd learned in treatment with regard to the 12-step program and my relationship with mood and mind altering substances, I realized I was in massive trouble. But by then it was just too late. Eventually I got kicked out of home. My drinking had now progressed to all day, without a job.
there can be physical adaptation of the body or the brain to the drug. This means that the person can use more and more and more without it having the same effect.
And I went to go and see a psychologist and I spoke to her. And I never really broached the subject of my addiction or how much I was drinking or using. Till eventually one day when I just went in there and I blurted it out and I said, look here, this thing is bigger than myself and I need to tell you about this. And then she gave me an address and she said, you can go here. On a Wednesday night, they've got 12-step meetings there. I ended up going for 11 months. During that 11 months, I was able to focus at university again. I started looking and feeling physically better. My relationships at home started to come together because now I didn't come home drunk, and I thought that I was okay. And then one day I was walking down Mowbray Main Road. There was a place called Champs there where I used to play pool, and I just walked in there. I went straight to the counter and I ordered a Black Label and I drank it, and that was the end of it. That was the end of all the nice things that came back into my life. That was the end of my sobriety for another 3 years. And for another 3 years, what happened was the downward spiral began again.
I was able to get periods of clean time, 2 months, 3 months. I fell back down, I got back in, I fell back down. And every time I kept relapsing, the damages accumulated even more. And I waved the flag of, I'm a drug addict, not an alcoholic. It was always the drugs that then led me to that alcoholic state. So I picked up a drink and I used alcohol every day of my life over the next 6 years, to the point where I'm quite fortunate to be alive here today. It was just this uncontrollable, unmanageable pit of alcoholism.
Despite my best efforts, I'd lost the respect of everybody that knew me. Such was the progression of my drinking and the damages that came with that. I had to drink to be restored to sanity at that point. If I didn't drink, I'd lose my mind. And when I started drinking, I started thinking skew. At the end, I was exhausted.
Most of the time, I would end up in emergency rooms all the time being stitched up. I had my arms broken twice. I've had beer bottles broken over my head. I got into a hell of a lot of fights. I wasn't as communicative at home with my family anymore. I would just come in and go and sleep because obviously, I passed out. I didn't fall asleep. I passed out because I was so drunk. And in the morning, I would be out of there again because I had to go and kill my babalas. And then I had some of the disappearing acts that I had, where I disappear from home on a Tuesday and my family wouldn't know where I've gone to, and I'll come back on a Sunday. 3 or 4 days later, after I would get paid, I would have no money left. And that is where my addiction has taken me. So in a sense, I went from living to existing.
Getting into my car in blackout, not remembering where my car is. I had to be a father to my son, yet I wasn't. I put him to sleep so I could use. I manipulated all of my staff members to enable me to use. My wife pushed her away with an endless amount of reasons why I couldn't be the husband to enable my using.
My life was in steady decline. It just took me down. Took me down faster. Every time I drank, there was very, very few, if any, relationships that I had that wasn't in tatters. And so I stayed out of work often. I had a whole range of different excuses. I knew while I was lying who I wanted to be. But I never knew when I drank what I was going to become, where I was going to wake up.
Addiction is very often quite devastating and affects more than any other brain disease, the whole family, the community, the society. It often starts with simple things like relationship difficulties and ends up with job losses, marriages that are destroyed, and it cycles down. People often end up homeless, and They may commit suicide, they may end up in prison.
Whenever I talk about this, I just remind myself where I come from and who I am. You know, there was this compulsion, you know, this uncontrollable compulsion to drink and use, regardless of what the negative consequences in my life was. I walked out of the nightclub, and I turned around, and there was this guy with this baseball bat, and he was walking towards me. I walked towards him, and he walked towards me, and he swung the baseball bat, and he hit me in the face. I went down, and I got up again, and he hit me in the face again with this baseball bat. You know, I just had this rage inside of me and this need to get up. And I got up again, and he hit me with a baseball bat in the face again. And you know, by this time, everything was slow motion, and people were shouting, my friends were shouting, Gideon, stay down. And I just couldn't. And that for me was, I think, when I reached my rock bottom.
I started running from the realities of my addiction and the consequences that were going to come until I couldn't run anymore, where I was literally in the corner and I had to just raise my hands and surrender.
The next step would have been, you know, something as extreme as taking my own life or just carrying on until my organs packed up. And my parents knew that there was something seriously wrong because I wasn't leaving the flat anymore. And I just begged God for a way out.
I knew there was a problem. My life had become totally unmanageable on every single front. Relationships, finance, in terms of my employment, all the significant things in my life, you know, were falling apart. And it fell apart to the extent that in 2003, I approached a rehabilitation clinic.
I don't think there were less alcoholics in the 1920s than what there are now. I just think we're becoming more open as a society, so alcoholics feel more comfortable coming out.
I knew exactly what I was up against. There was no doubt in my mind that this disease was going to claim my life. I knew there was a lot of wreckage behind me, but I knew that that was it for me. That was the end of the story. No, as soon as I landed and I detoxed for 3 days, the desire to drink left me.
Well, as the 12-step states, the first step is to admit you have a problem. Without that, you really can't start moving.
I continued on this thought of, it's not me, until walking on the beach. And I, for some reason, connected with the fact that I shouldn't be walking here right now. And I shouldn't be feeling the sand under my feet or the rays on my face. And all of a sudden, the penny dropped, and it's changed since.
The first thing that I was told was I had to get in touch with the damages, with the consequences in my life. I thought that my addiction had everything to do with where I came from, my childhood. And I allowed something like that to run my life for about 21 years. I sat in groups and there was other people like me. And when they started telling their stories and they spoke about their consequences, I could identify with some of it.
And I sat in a room with people the very first time who put their hands up and said, you know, my name is X, I'm an addict. And they started to talk about their lived experience with addiction. Addiction is just the word. They then started telling me what their lives were like, what happened to them, what their lives are like now, and huge bells went off for me. The night I made the call when I was desperate, somebody answered the phone. These are the people who I said I didn't like, yet they kept telling me, just come back next week, just come back tomorrow, just don't drink for the next hour.
It's now 11 years, going on 12 years. And today I've got a life beyond my expectations. I've got a little boy. I'm in a committed relationship. I never knew that I was going to have so much in my life. I'm now a real son to my mother. I've got my brothers and my sisters on the phone on a regular basis. I'm the oldest brother, I'm the Buddha. And to me, if I look at that, that's a miracle. And I know that before that wasn't possible at all. People didn't trust me that much. I get up in the morning and I'm really excited to do life. And I turn up at work on time. I report to my workstation and I do my work to the best of my ability. I try to operate at 150% because I have to make up for the times in active addiction when I operated at 50%. It's not for me anymore about what I can get out of life, but it's about what I can pack into life.
I haven't picked up a drink or a drug again because I discovered another dimension. Through the 12 steps, I didn't have to drink or drug anymore. I could investigate my life. I am very fortunate. God's given me a gift to be a teacher. I stand in front of many young people, and many times I wanted to leave. I wanted to go and do something else with my life. And there comes a certain point in every single module where God guides me to tell them that I've had a problem with substance abuse, that I saw the benefit of helping the still suffering addict. I don't know what it is. I've never said no to an assignment that asked me, and I've never asked for anything in return. Because the night I made the call when I was desperate, somebody answered the phone.
Almost 5 years down the line, I continue with that knowledge that A, I'm an addict, okay, and that a drink and a drug will kill me. And I need to own my decision making. It's not about should I, shouldn't I take drugs, and who do I need to lie or steal from to get my next hit. Today it's more other decision making on how have I taught my sons well or unwell, how have I reacted to that person based on how I'm feeling. It's more real behavior issues, but I'm able to own my part and I'm able to then grow from that. I'm grateful to be alive. It's a gift because I have a chance to enjoy my boys, I have a chance to enjoy my wife, I have a chance to enjoy my work, this beautiful city that I live in, because I believe that I have a mandate in life, and that's to carry a message, you know? There's no other reason why I'm sitting here today.
This is one of the wonders of the program, the 12th step, is that your recovery is something to be delighted in and handed on to energize the lives of others.
I accepted that I had no idea how to live, and that was the first thing. I accepted that my life had become completely unmanageable, and I was completely powerless over alcohol or any mood or mind-altering substance for that matter. I realised that for the past 10 years of my life, I haven't been living a normal life, and I've got no idea of what living a normal life means. The things that have happened in my life since I started this program, you know, sometimes you have the best dream in the world. Even in that wildest dream, I never had what I have today.
I think the one message that I want to give anyone out there is that this thing is bigger than yourself. No amount of self-knowledge will help you to deal with your problem. So if you're realizing at this stage that you have a problem, is to try and get help. And when you get the help, to take the help.
The sooner you pick up a problem and the sooner you have a desire to want to change, the easier it is to change.
Have an open mind and listen. It's a fundamental skill that I picked up in my process, is listening, because I didn't listen.
I would just hope that they would find a power greater than themselves.
Open your mouth and ask for help. It's the most difficult thing to do, but it works. There is help available. If we can SMS, if we can email, you know, to find the drugs, then we can use the same medium to find recovery.
In next week's episode, we again feature alcohol and will meet 4 other people from different walks of life for whom alcohol became the central theme in their lives, to the point of almost total destruction for them and their families. Our hope is that after watching these programs, anyone affected by the consequences of addiction, be it the addict themselves, family members, friends, work colleagues and communities at large, will better understand addiction and be able to make informed decisions regarding seeking help, advice, counseling, and support.